Joining me now is CNN military analyst and retired Lieutenant Colonel Rick Francona. He served as a U.S. Air Force intelligence officer during the Persian Gulf War, also served in northern Iraq with the CIA. Rick, thank you so much for being with us.
Sure.
You've been in this situation, so you can help me understand what's going on here. When these military personnel, these special forces, leave the U.S. Embassy, they go to the front lines, they show up, and what happens? You walk up to an Iraqi major and say, "Hi, I'm from America, I'm here to advise"?
I'm here to help. No, there's an art to this. You have to go in there and let them know that you are there to help. But there's a way to do that without appearing to be arrogant. Like we're coming in here to tell you people who don't understand what you're doing how this is supposed to be done. We're the Americans. So follow what we, listen to what we say and do what we say. That doesn't work. You've got to get in there and, recruit them and let them know that you are there to help, but you want to work with them, not for them to work for you.
Do they actually want U.S. advice, or do they want U.S. missiles being fired from planes at these ISIS forces?
Actually, they want the latter, but they'll have to put up with the former to get that. They know that we're not going to commit weapons, we're not going to conduct airstrikes unless we feel that our needs are going to be met as well. And right now, we have to assess if that's going to actually be what the Iraqis need.
Well, that's the flip side. Are we there, the U.S., is the U.S. actually there to provide advice that the U.S. thinks will be taken, or are U.S. military personnel there to actually look at ISIS themselves and get a sense of what's going on?
Well, they're going to look at both, John. They're going to look, first, they're going to look, their initial task, is my understanding from the Pentagon, is to assess the Iraqi army. Can they do this? What do they need? Can we help them? Is what we're going to do going to be enough to disrupt ISIS? And if that's not, then we have to come back and figure out what are we going to do, because the goal here is to get ISIS out of that country, and we're hoping that the Iraqi army can do it. So the first job is, can the Iraqis do this? If they can, what do they need? Then, and only then, should we be assessing ISIS.
And we say 300 U.S. military personnel headed there, but don't they need translators? Don't they need transport? Doesn't this indicate an operation that isn't insignificant?
Well, there'll be 300 Americans. All that other support will probably be either contractors or local Iraqis that the Iraqi army will provide. So the 300 is actually just the U.S. Army, U.S. Air Force, U.S. Marine Corps, Navy personnel that are going to be there. And that 300 does not count the countless numbers of pilots that are overflying that country right now. So at any given moment, there are manned platforms over that country that are not being counted.
There's a phrase you hear tossed around sometimes, if you're not in the military, it doesn't necessarily mean much: rules of engagement. So you're one of these U.S. military personnel, they're advising the Iraqis. You get fired upon by ISIS, what do?
Well, I assume they're going to fire back and they'll be armed, but of course the protection of these advisors will be the responsibility of the Iraqi army. But they're all going to have their own personal weapons, and the rules of engagement will allow them to respond, but only if they're shot at first. I know these are crazy rules.
Crazy. And again, when the president says no troops going back into combat, there's combat going all around them, so effectively they're in combat.
They're at risk. I mean, they're going to be pushed down as far as the brigade level. The brigade is the basic combat military unit of the Iraqi army. So if you're an advisor to a brigade headquarters, you're going to be out there where people are shooting at you.
Last question. Does this provide some kind of opportunity for U.S. involvement in Syria? The Syrian conflict's been very difficult for the U.S. to get involved in. But won't the U.S. follow ISIS if it sees them running across the border to Syria?
Well, that's a question I put to some of my colleagues at the Pentagon. They've decided not to answer that. They said right now they're going to focus on ISIS in Iraq, and Syria may be down the road, but they said that's a whole other political ballgame they don't want to talk about right now.
But if they can kill, if the U.S. can kill some of the bad guys who've been fighting in Syria, if they can kill them or help kill them in the Iraqi desert, that's not a bad thing for the Syrian conflict.
Well, what we're also seeing is we're seeing the Syrian Air Force coming over into Iraq and bombing targets in Iraq. So you've got cooperation between the Iraqi government and the Syrian government killing people in Iraq. Now, we're going to get involved in that. We're going to put U.S. forces in the middle of this. This is a real problem.
And that's why it's so complicated, and that's why clearly the president has been so hesitant to get involved. Rick Francona, thank you so much for being with us.
Can't have it.
Appreciate seeing you.